Imagine this. You wake before dawn, heart pounding, drenched in sweat despite the chill. The room is silent save for the echo of your own ragged breath. You lie suspended between wakefulness and sleep, caught in a loop of unrest, as if an invisible hand has pressed pause on your life. You feel strangely distant from yourself, like a ghost haunting your own body. A question surges in your mind with the force of an avalanche. Why does this weight press so relentlessly against your chest? You rise, stumbling through familiar rooms that now feel alien. The mirror greets you with hollow eyes, the reflection of someone you barely recognize. Yet this fatigue is no accident of circumstance. You've eaten, slept or tried to, yet the numbness lingers. It claws at your thoughts, whispers that you are broken, hopeless. You've been told depression is a chemical imbalance, a medical malfunction, a glitch to be corrected with pills or platitudes. But what if it's something else entirely? Herein lies the unsettling paradox. The very thing we fear most, this crushing dark, be the signpost to our deepest awakening. Conventional wisdom treats depression as an enemy to be wiped out, buried beneath pharmacological band-aids or motivational catchphrases. We wage war on our own minds, deploying every tool we can. Therapy sessions that replay the same loops, self-help mantras chanted with dwindling faith, medication regimens administered like a reluctant ritual. Still, the black tide returns. Is it possible that the enemy we battle is actually a messenger? That behind the ache lies a cryptic invitation to radical self. Imagine depression not as a curse but as an initiation, a grim underworld passage urging you toward a truth too searing for the comfortable light of day. When Apollo's sun god beams blind us with brilliance, we cannot see the scars hidden in shadow. It is in the abyss where the psyche speaks in tongues we ignore at our peril. What if every restless night, every surge of existential dread, is the soul's urgent dispatch? Could the heaviness in your chest be signaling that something within you hungers for more than surface-level fixes, more than the hollow promises of constant happiness? There is a catastrophic beauty in this thought. The collapse of your former identity may be exactly the crisis that proves you still possess the spark of life. Undimmed beneath layers of defense, feel the tension swell in your bones. You are at a crossroads where surrender is not defeat, but the only path forward. Lean too hard into the struggle and you break. Resist too fiercely, and you lose the very message etched in your despair. In this liminal space, you are neither the broken person you've been told you are, nor the cured version you've been sold as the endgame. You stand instead at the threshold of something immense, something that demands you shed everything you thought you knew about yourself. Why has society convinced you that perpetual optimism is your birthright, that disquiet is proof of personal failure? Consider the ethical underpinnings of forced cheer, that raw emotions are to be sanitized, that suffering is a stain on one's character. What if this cultural directive to just be happy is itself a form of spiritual neglect? And what if depression has arisen to pierce this smug delusion, to show you that beneath the veneer of positivity lies a world worth probing? Questions tumble. What parts of yourself have you abandoned in pursuit of superficial ease? What unheard voices echo in the corridors of your mind? What truths has the world demanded you suppress to maintain the fiction of normalcy? The answers hover at the edge of your awareness, tantalizing, yet locked behind the gate of your discomfort. You are left holding the question. Could the very darkness you dread be the catalyst for a greater dawn? You sense a rift opening in the foundation of your reality, a crack through which a new vision might emerge. But to cross that threshold, you must first acknowledge the significance of what you're experiencing. Depression, you realize, might not be an affliction to eradicate but a guidepost directing you inward. As the first pale light of morning filters through your window, you're left on the cusp of revelation. The familiar landscape of your mind has shifted. The journey ahead feels perilous, yet brimming with possibility. Something ancient and fierce stirs within, beckoning you deeper. And here at this crossroads between despair and discovery, the real question arises. What if your depression is not your undoing, but the herald of a spiritual awakening? You stand before a mirror once more, but this time you're not searching for a broken reflection. You're hunting for the hidden architect of your pain. What if the weight you carry isn't just in your brain chemistry, but woven into the very fabric of your psyche? The depression you experience is less a random malfunction than the inevitable consequence of a hidden force, a cradle of shadows nested in your unconscious, festering beneath the smooth surface of everyday life. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow as the rejected parts of ourselves, the instincts and desires we bury because they conflict with the persona we present to the world. You have built an identity around what feels acceptable, cheerful, in control, but every time you silence a piece of your truth, you reinforce a dam that will one day burst. That dark river beneath the dam is your depression, its rising waters eroding your fragile defenses. You fear these depths as if they'll swallow you whole. But Jung would say that only by confronting the shadow can you become whole. Friedrich Nietzsche insisted that he who fights with monsters should be careful, lest he thereby become a monster. What if the monsters you battle are not external pressures but the very ideologies you have internalized? You've imbibed a recipe for success: productivity at all costs, relentless positivity, constant progress. This creed demands sacrifice, spontaneity, vulnerability, the raw tremor of true feeling. You have alienated yourself from the spontaneous child who delighted in nothingness, the part of you that dared to doubt the whole enterprise of striving. Depression surfaces where ambition turns into tyranny, where the relentless yes to achievement becomes a merciless no to your own soul. Arthur Schopenhauer painted life as an endless wheel of desire and suffering. Every fulfilled longing births a fresh emptiness that demands more. You chase happiness in promotions, relationships, acquisitions. Each eludes you, each whispers that you are incomplete. Schopenhauer's bleak vision suggests that the very structure of desire is a trap, and you are in. Your depression is not a detour from life, but the inevitable arrival at the destination the world promised you would bring joy. Aldous Huxley warned of a society lulled into conformity by trivial pursuits and superficial diversions. The most alarming of all, he wrote, is the mass of obedient citizens who have bought into the system so thoroughly they resist any suggestion that things could be otherwise. You scroll through feeds of curated smiling faces, each post a silent admonition: be like us, feel like us, thrive like us. You have become a citizen of this regime, a compliance officer in your own mind. But in quiet moments, you catch glimpses of revolt and inexplicable restlessness, a muted cry for authenticity. That cry echoes in the hollows of your chest as depression, demanding you refuse the siren call of conformity. Jean-Paul Sartre declared we are condemned to be free, burdened with the responsibility of choice in a universe indifferent to our plight. You feel this burden acutely. Each morning, you choose to rise, to play the game, to pretend. Every small decision is a test. Will you submit to the narratives imposed upon you or carve a path of your own? You balk at this freedom, so vast it terrifies you into inaction. Depression is the paradoxical outcome of Sartre's freedom: too much choice, too little guidance. You feel paralyzed, unable to act, because every step seems to threaten the fragile self you've constructed. Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of concentration camps, discovered that suffering itself can become a gateway to meaning when we choose our attitude toward it. But meaning cannot be prescribed. It must be forged in the crucible of your unique existence. You've tried every external therapy, every prescribed meaning volunteering, self-help seminars, motivational slogans, but the emptiness remains. This is because the real work lies not in the world, but in your encounter with it. Your depression beckons you to ask, what meaning will you create in this vast, indifferent expanse? Look around you. A consumer culture that measures worth by profit margins, an academic world that reduces truth to data points, a social network that distills friendship into likes and You have internalized these metrics as yours, and yet, in the silent thrum of your despair, you sense this architecture cracking. The hidden problem isn't just in your mind, it's in the collective dream you've bought into, a dream that demands you ignore the mystery and grandeur of inner life. This force call, the market, the machine's shadow is the great unspoken hungry beast. It feeds on your attention, your emotions, your capacity for It tells you that comfort is the ultimate goal, that discomfort is a sign of personal failure. But discomfort, the philosophers whisper from their graves, is the price of growth and the herald of transformation. Your depression is the rebellion of your inner life against a world that would rather keep you placid, productive, and predictable. And so you stand at a crossroads, continue to wage the same battles, applying superficial fixes to systemic wounds, or confront the hidden problem head-on. You sense that the next steps won't be found in another therapy session or in a pill bottle, but in a deeper excavation of self and society. The psychological roots run deeper than neurotransmitters. The philosophical roots reach back to the dawn of consciousness itself. You must unearth them, trace their tendrils through your history, and recognize how they have shaped every thought, every feeling, every moment of dread. Remember, the pain you feel is no accident. It is the signal of a misalignment so profound it demands your full attention. In neglecting these hidden foundations, you invite the shadows to grow unchecked. But in turning toward them, acknowledging the cultural narratives, the repressed instincts, the weight of existential freedom, you begin to trace a new map. A map that reveals not only the roots of your suffering, but the pathways out of the labyrinth. You have glimpsed the hidden problem and its ancient lineage. The stage is set for something deeper, the consequences that have silently shaped every corner of your life. The unseen forces at work are more powerful than you realize. The next act in this unfolding drama will expose them fully. Yet, you cannot yet see the full magnitude of what lies ahead. You only know that the journey will demand courage, unlike any you've summoned before. And somewhere, beyond the edge of your fear, lies the promise of a freedom you have only dared to imagine. And yet, the true gravity of your condition remains hidden, like the shifting currents beneath an ocean's placid surface. You feel the pull of 1,000 tiny forces, each imperceptible on its own, yet together they shape the trajectory of your life. Consider confirmation bias. You notice only the evidence that affirms your hopelessness, filtering out every glimmer of possibility. Every minor misstep becomes proof that you are doomed, while every triumph slips through the cracks of your awareness, too faint to register. This distortion of perception is not merely a quirk of your mind. It is a mechanism by which depression ensnares you, convincing you that escape is both impossible and undeserved. Beneath that, there's a neurological undercurrent, the hypervigilant, sounding false alarms of danger where none exist. The prefrontal cortex, dulled, unable to marshal the rational analysis necessary to challenge those alarms. The reward pathways, rewired to ignore life's pleasures, leaving you adrift in a landscape devoid of color or taste. Science tells us that neurotransmitters fluctuate, synapses weaken, circuits clinical as they are, fail to capture the lived terror of being trapped inside your own brain. It's not just that the chemicals are out of balance, it's that your entire nervous system has conspired to lock you in a fortress of despair. Cultural conditioning adds its own invisible walls. You've been taught to associate worth with productivity, intimacy with performance, success with unbridled positivity. This triumvirate of expectations fashions a rigid framework in which one missed a pan overdue email, a misread text, a moment of paralysis feels like irrevocable failure. You learn early that emotions are things to be mastered, not explored. Vulnerability is weakness, questions are threats, doubt is a crime. In this conditioned reflex, your soul shrinks away, retreating into a bunker where silence reigns supreme. And when you emerge, blinking in the daylight of others' expectations, you find that the world you thought you fit into has little room for the trembling, questioning self you've become. The unseen consequences of these forces cascade outward, shaping not only your inner life, but your relationships, your work, even your physical health. You stop risking closeness for fear of burdening loved ones. You reject opportunities before you even try, convinced of your inevitable failure. You trade real nourishment for quick fixes, sugar screens, substances seeking in vain to fill a void that only grows. Each choice seems rational in isolation, but viewed together they form a pattern. The gradual erosion of possibility. What was once a vibrant array of futures narrows to a single trajectory downward, inward, into darkness. And darkness is seductive. It promises safety in stasis, a sort of frozen comfort you need only stop moving to avoid further pain. Yet the agony of inertia is its own brand of torture. Days bleed into nights, nights into days. Time becomes an endless, tormented loop. You sense the horizon slipping beyond reach, as if you're walking on a treadmill that's gradually ramping up incline. Every step demands more energy than you can muster. Your body aches under the strain. Your spirit weeps for relief it cannot name. This trap, woven from bias, biology, and conditioning, operates with stealth. You don't notice the walls rising until you're pinned in. And the worst of it is that it feels entirely of your own making. You chastise yourself for lacking willpower, for failing to pull yourself together, for not being grateful enough for what you have. Guilt and shame become twin torments, each intensifying the other. They whisper that you're unworthy of help, that others would be better off without your burdens. You recoil, convinced that isolation is the truest path to spare everyone, including yourself, from further pain. But isolation is the engine fueling the machine. Behind the scenes, those hidden forces grow stronger when you retreat, feeding on silence and secrecy. In that hush, your fear compounds, your thoughts ricochet unchecked. You begin to identify more with your distress than with the self that still yearns for life, and the world, busy with its own momentum, moves on without you. Your absence goes unnoticed until the cost becomes too high. Relationships fray, opportunities vanish, health deteriorates. Yet by then, the trap's jaws have closed so tight that you no longer believe escape is possible. Still, a faint pulse of resistance throbs within you, the echo of a self that refuses to be extinguished. It asks, what if the pieces of you lost to this dark machinery could be What if beneath the layers of cognitive distortion, chemical imbalance, and cultural programming lies a core untainted by fear? The problem is not merely scientific or social. It is existential. You stand at the intersection of forces that seek to define you and the self that beckons you to redefine them. The urgency of this crossroads cannot be overstated. The unseen consequences will continue to unfurl, shaping every moment until you confront the trap in its entirety. Only by illuminating the mechanisms that bind you, by naming the biases, mapping the neural circuits, dismantling the cultural narratives, can you begin to reshape the contours of your existence. You must step into the darkness, not to remain there, but to carry its truths into the light. Ahead lies the possibility of a breakthrough so profound it will feel like resurrection. But first, you must acknowledge the full magnitude of the forces arrayed against you. Only then can you ignite the spark that will shatter the unnoticed barriers and guide you toward a radical reclamation of self. The journey is labyrinthine and perilous, but the alternative, continuing to spiral in the silent abysses of fate no one deserves. You stand now on the edge of a precipice, the walls of your inner fortress cracked but unbroken. To break free, you must inaugurate a rebellion against every assumption that has held you hostage. This revolt begins with a single defiant act, turning your gaze not away from the darkness, but directly into its heart. Where you once sought to eradicate pain, you will now welcome it as a teacher. First, dismantle the myth of relentless positivity. The prevailing gospel preaches that happiness is your birthright, leaving no room for the creative power of sorrow. But history's greatest visionaries, from Vincent van Gogh to Frida Kahlo, found their deepest expression in suffering. Kahlo painted her pain into vivid, transforming agony into art. In doing so, she reclaimed agency over her narrative. You, too, can wield your despair as a brush, mapping your inner terrain with unflinching honesty. Next, adopt what Viktor Frankl called the defiant power of the human spirit. When everything is stripped away, comfort, certainty, even hope, you discover that freedom resides in your attitude towards circumstances. You might start small. Choose one aspect of your life you've long surrendered to apathy and resolve to face it today. If social anxiety has kept you silent, speak one truth to a friend. If existential dread shackles your mornings, journal the first fear that arises and watch it shrink as you name it. Each act of defiance chips away at the walls, proving that you are not merely a passive victim of mood or biology. Then there is the counterintuitive practice of negative capability, a term coined by poet John Keats to describe the capacity to dwell in uncertainties without grasping for premature closure. Instead of forcing answers or plastering over doubt with affirmations, learn to sit with ambiguity. Spend 15 minutes each day in quiet meditation, not seeking enlightenment but observing the swirl of thoughts and emotions. Like staring at a Rorschach inkblot, allow the shapes of your psyche to reveal themselves without judgment. In this liminal state, you may glimpse the hidden mechanics of your depression and begin to disentangle its threads. Historical rebels illuminate the path. Consider Nelson Mandela, who endured 27 years of imprisonment not by extinguishing his anger, but by reframing suffering as a forge for moral clarity. He refused to let bitterness define him, instead channeling his pain into a vision of reconciliation. Your own rebellion doesn't require global impact, only the courageous decision to refuse your suffering as authority. Declare, in the privacy of your mind, the that you will not cede any more ground to despair. But rebellion is more than mindset. It demands ritual. Create symbolic ceremonies that mark your progress. On days you feel crushed, write a letter to your depression, a raw, unfiltered account of its effects. Then burn the letter safely, watching the smoke carry fragments of your pain skyward. This act externalizes the struggle, transforming invisible torment into a tangible object you can control. Over time, these rituals become milestones on your path, evidence that power resides not in the absence of suffering, but in your response to it. Equally radical is reclaiming physical autonomy. Depression often narrows your world to a static interior. Break free by moving your body in ways that defy inertia. Practice a martial art, dance alone to thunderous music, hike until the horizon expands. The shock of sensation winds slicing across your face. The thud of feet against earth jolts you out of cerebral paralysis. It reminds you that you inhabit a body alive with potential, not merely a mind besieged by gloom. Challenge the narratives that bind you by rewriting them. In a journal, recast the story of your life from the perspective of a hero's journey. Identify the dark night of the soul as the transformative ordeal. Name the allies you overlooked, friends who listened, strangers who offered kindness. Acknowledge the moments you persevered, however small. By reframing your history, you shift the axis of meaning. Depression becomes a chapter, not the whole book. Another tactic. Seek the company of rebels. Surround yourself with voices that validate complexity rather than demanding cheer. Read the poetry of Sylvia Plath, the essays of James Baldwin, the testimonies of those who survived without succumbing to simplistic cures. Join support groups online or in person where authenticity outweighs performance. Witnessing others confront their darkness gives you both solidarity and a model of courage. You may also enlist the radical potential of creativity. Depression distorts your reward system, but creative engagement can rewire neural pathways. Begin a project that feels audacious, a short film, a piece of music, a spoken word performance. Progress will be uneven. Embrace the awkward drafts, the false starts. Each act of making, regardless of external validation, sends a message beneath the synaptic noise. You are a creator, not just a reactor to chemical tides. Finally, integrate these shifts into a new philosophy of life. Reject the binary of well or ill and embrace a continuum where growth and suffering coexist. Define personal success not by eradication of pain, but by the depth of your engagement with it. Let your rebellion crystallize into a creed. I will feel fully, think radically, act courageously. Repeat it as an incantation when you feel yourself slipping. As you marshal these forces, mindset, ritual, movement, creativity, community, you'll sense the fortress trembling. The rebellion unfolds, not as a single conquest, but as a series of insurgent acts, each chipping away at the hierarchy's depression erected in your mind. You begin to move through the world with a new posture. Defiance, tempered by curiosity. Strength, tempered by compassion. You discover that the true power lies not in vanquishing darkness, but in dancing with it, learning its rhythms, and directing its energy toward a life of raw authenticity. The air around you crackles with possibility. You have glimpsed the mechanics of your own liberation. And yet, the most profound epiphany still lies ahead, the ultimate truth that transforms rebellion into awakening. But for now, stand in the whirlwind you've summoned. Taste the electric thrill of radical choice, and savor the exhilarating knowledge that you are, at last, the author of your own fate. And now, standing amid the debris of old certainties, you confront the final threshold, the ultimate truth that reframes every sorrow you've endured. Throughout this journey, you've learned that depression is not a glitch to be erased, but a guide to be honored. But what if the deepest revelation lies beyond guidance into transformation, a revelation that shatters the very frame through which you've seen reality? Close your eyes and feel the pulse of your being, the rhythm that predates thought, that throbs beneath every breath. Here, at this silent epicenter, there is no sorrow, no joy, no story, only pure awareness. Everything you've called you has been woven from this luminous thread, yet you have mistaken the tapestry for the weaver. Depression tugged at the fabric, revealing the illusion. Your identity is not the dam you built against chaos, nor the labels others affixed to you. You are the space in which every experience, every emotion, every memory appears and vanishes. This is the radical shift. You are not your thoughts, not your feelings, not your history. You are the unshakable witness behind them. Like the sky that remains untroubled by passing clouds, your essence endures untouched by the storms of depression. Paradoxically, it is the intensity of your suffering that has peeled back the layers, laying bare this luminous ground. The very darkness you recoiled from was the contrast necessary to see the light that was always there. Ask yourself, have you ever observed the sky during a thunderstorm, convinced it was gray forever, only to find it resplendent once the clouds dissipate? The clouds were real, heavy, and frightening, but they were not the sky. Likewise, your depression, its despair, its stagnation was a cloud crossing the expanse of your consciousness, not the totality of who you are. Recognizing this distinction doesn't make the clouds vanish on command. It grants you the freedom to watch them, to know they, too, will pass. This liberation is your birthright, though it must be claimed through suffering's crucible. You realize now that every cognitive distortion, every cultural imposition, every neural misfire had a purpose: to push you into inquiry. It was never about erasing the pain, but about transmuting it. Like alchemists of old, you've converted lead into gold, turned despair into insight, fragmentation into unity. Depression was your raw material, not your tomb. And in this unity, you perceive an even greater paradox. Your individual awakening resonates with a collective pulse. When you recognize yourself as the boundless witness, you glimpse the same ground in others. All barriers erected by fear and judgment dissolve. What once felt like an impenetrable prison, your solitary suffering, becomes the doorway to universal compassion. You see that every human being is a fellow traveler across the storm-tossed sea of mind, and in that recognition, you find both humility and power. This is the ultimate truth. You are both the wave and the ocean, the actor and the stage, the question and the answer. Existence is not a puzzle to solve, but a mystery to inhabit. Your depression was never a problem to be fixed, but an initiation into the heart of that mystery. Now, with the paradox resolved, you no longer flee from darkness, nor cling to fleeting highs. You dance between opposites, suffering and joy, certainty and doubt, with a fluid grace, born of seeing both as expressions of the same underlying reality. How, then, do you live this truth? Not by escaping into esoteric abstraction, but by bringing it into every moment. When fear arises, you greet it as an old friend, knowing it reveals the edge of your comfort and the frontier of growth. When bliss arises, you savor it fully, recognizing its impermanence enhances its radiance. In relationships, you listen with presence rather than agenda, honoring the sacred curiosity that springs from shared vulnerability. In work and play, you infuse every action with awareness, transforming the mundane into ritual. Your life becomes an artwork of attention, each breath a brushstroke on the canvas of being. You build no fortress against experience, for you understand that boundaries can also become prisons. Instead, you cultivate the fertile field of awareness where all phenomena can bloom and wither in their season. Here, in this living paradox, lies freedom unparalleled: to feel without being overwhelmed, to act without attachment, to love without conditions. In the twilight between night and dawn, as you stand once more at the window of your existence, the city lights below mirror the myriad thoughts that once crowded your mind, but now you observe them like constellations, each flicker meaningful, each pattern a story, yet none defining the vastness beyond. You inhale the cool air, feeling it course through your lungs like liquid sky. You exhale a sigh that carries away the last residue of doubt, and in this stillness, you recognize the journey of depression was never a detour, it was the highway to awakening. Your despair was the bell's toll, calling you to attention. Your rebellion was the forge where your spirit was tempered, and this ultimate truth is the gift you carry forward. It demands no proclamation, only devotion to the sacred art of presence. So step into the world not as one who has overcome depression, but as one who has been consecrated by it. Walk in the ordinary with eyes that have drunk from the extraordinary. Let your life be the living testament to the fact that the darkest night's birth, the brightest stars. And as you go, remember, the boundless sky of your true self is forever unmarred by passing storms. Now, let your next breath be the first stroke of a new masterpiece, one that transcends fear, honors mystery, and embraces the infinite dance of existence.